Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Ford Theater and the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. I'm Daniel Lano, director of the museum's Haley Gallery. Today, we're honored to have with us three outstanding quilt-making artists connected with the Gee's Bend community of Alabama: Claudia Pettway Charley, Loretta Pettway Bennett, and Marlene Bennett Jones. They'll be talking to us about the tradition of artistic quilt making that they come from and their experiences as Southern vernacular artists. Their works and the works of other Black vernacular artists are now on display in our new exhibit in the Haley Gallery titled Heritage Southern Vernacular. Our moderator for this panel, Paul Barrett, is an independent curator based in Birmingham, Alabama. Over the past 30 years, he has organized over 200 exhibitions, including the traveling exhibitions I Too Am Thornton Dial and What I Knew How to Do, featuring Charlie Lucas and Yvonne Wells. He recently curated the Haley Gallery's Willie Cole exhibition, Lyrical Reconstructions, and is currently working on a new monograph to accompany a major survey of the artist's work. With that, I'll turn it over to Paul Barrett.
Hello. The microphone does work. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I'm going to rely on some notes and introduce the artists who will accompany me on stage. Claudia Pettway Charley is an entrepreneur and fourth-generation quilt maker from Gee's Bend. Her company, That's So Gee's Bend, creates pot holders and home accessories inspired by the Gee's Bend aesthetic. She has helped negotiate collaborations with designers and corporate partners, including Chloe, Marfa Stantz, Target, and Greg Lauren, who designed the Gee's Bend quilted jacket Questlove wore when he accepted his Oscar in 2022. Claudia recently helped found the nonprofit So Gee's Bend Heritage Builders, which was instrumental in helping us organize this exhibition. So, Claudia Pettway Charley. The next featured artist on the panel is Loretta Pettway Bennett. Loretta Pettway Bennett was among the youngest generation of quilters who participated in the now famous touring museum exhibition of Gee's Bend quilts organized by the Museum of Fine Arts Houston in 2002. That show traveled throughout the United States and remained the best attended exhibition in the history of the Whitney Museum of American Art for many years. Her quilts and prints can be found in collections of museums across the United States. A photo of Loretta's quilt medallion is featured cover art on the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum's recently released box set of recordings titled From Where I Stand, which documents a century of country music by Black recording artists. Loretta? And last but certainly not least, Marlene Bennett Jones worked for 37 years as an electrician for Lockheed Martin and other companies. She began making quilts around the year 2000 when she returned home to Gee's Bend to help take care of her mother. Today, Marlene and Loretta host Vacations with an Artist in Gee's Bend, where participants can receive one-on-one instructions in traditional quilt making with the additional opportunity to stay in a private home in Gee's Bend. And anyone who is interested in those opportunities, I encourage you to visit vawaa.com for more details. So please, Marlene. And before we go on, I want to thank the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum, and particularly Daniel and Aaron at the Haley Gallery for hosting all of us and for organizing the show and this event. Claudia, I'm going to pick on you first.
All right, that's nothing new. Okay.
Yeah, no.
It's not new.
So you have worked on several of the corporate partnerships that I mentioned that have been bringing the artists from Gee's Bend into collaborations to reach a broader audience. Would you talk to us a little bit about that work?
Well, yeah, that is quite interesting. You know, one thing is that, you know, Gee's Bend has always pretty much been known for your traditional quilting. And to have the fashion world suddenly take interest in our small community was totally unbelievable. I mean, we were just as astounded probably as they were, and excited, and a little bit scared, because we had no idea what this was going to mean for the community and the quilters especially, because now here we are in this limelight of fashion and designing things like clothing. I mean, we're only used to making quilts. So we're not manufacturers, you know. We're not clothes makers by no means, you know. Give us some old rags and we'll do miracles. But now you want to give us this elaborate fabric, something that Gee's Benders have never worked with before, because we love our cotton. Okay, so we had collaborators like Greg Lauren, and we love Greg because Greg actually allowed us to be very creative in a sense that whatever we wanted to do, we did. And he provided us with a lot of cotton fabric, so we were really happy about the fact that we can work with some things that we want to work with. And with Greg Lauren, it was very simple because we could design our own patterns. And those patterns was pretty much like fabric itself, because what they did is once we made those panels, and the panels were different sizes, he would then take those panels from Gee's Bend and he would use those to make clothing. So we would have these beautiful coats and some of the things that you see here, and those patches were found on pants and jackets, and it was just amazing how our work turned out. So we were like, yeah, we're bad now, you know. We're all over the place. We were really excited. You know, we're in magazines, and we're traveling to California and places like that, and we're on the runway. I mean, imagine Gee's Benders actually on a runway in a fashion show. You have to think that people go to college for this type of thing. And here we come, you know, Gee's Bend, Alabama, on the runway as fashion designers. So, I mean, that was really, really exciting to see. And working with Greg was, again, like I said, it was one of my favorite projects. Another project for me was Martha Stance. I had the opportunity with another quilter to actually go to London. And, you know, that was really, really cool, except for I don't like flying. So I'm trying to figure out how am I going to actually do this and fly all this time. I told the other lady, I said, you know, do you have anything in your purse you can just give me so I can just pass out and wake up in London on stage? Because I don't want this part. So I get there, and everybody, again, is very, very excited about what Gee's Bend has done. And here we are at the Royal Academy of Arts, guys. And you see all of these quilters, people from my community, on the wall in a different setting. And it just took on a whole nother meaning for Gee's Bend. Because we never thought in a million years, if we lived a million years, that that would happen. It was phenomenal. It was life-changing, if I could describe it. It was probably one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And it was definitely well-received. And working with Martha Stance, one of the things was that she was very, the company itself, well, actually the owner's name is George, okay, not Martha. But it was very exciting because we took some fabric, I swear. Some of that stuff was so thin we could see through it. And remember, I told you guys, you know, we like cotton, right? They gave us things that looked like lingerie and silk and satin, and I don't really even know what some of it was. And we put it together, and And one of the things that some of the other quilters were talking about, some of the challenges that we had, was the fact that some of it was very thin, so by the time we tried to actually make a quilt, it would look kind of wrinkly around the edges. And, the professional quilters like, Loretta and Marlene here, they were like, oh, I can make this look good, because they can make anything look good. So when it was my turn, I was like, oh, this is just not going to work. But my mother and I was actually able to put something together that was really, really nice, and it worked out fine. But again, very challenging for us. And I think it was an education for Gee's Benders to say that, we've had challenges all of our lives. There was nothing that Gee's Bend didn't ever think that we can do, simply because we had to do it. We never thought about it as a challenge. It was just a way of life. What other people looked at as difficult, we looked at it as just like every day. Well, here we go again. I mean, nothing's new for us. So having to do that type of work and work with those different fashion designers with that type of material, again, it was great. It was really, really good to see our works on the runways in Paris, the Fashion Week, someone walking down with the quilt that was made from a Gee's Bender, the vest that they wore, and the fact that these were one-of-a-kind pieces was wonderful. Personally, myself, if anybody know anything about music, I know this is country music, but you guys may be familiar with Questlove. Anybody know who Questlove is in the audience? All right, we have some Questlove fans. I'm excited. You guys are really great. Well, I was actually able to be one of the designers on Questlove's jacket, which was another Greg Lauren collaboration. And so when Quest won the award, I'm in my house like jumping up like I've won an award too, because technically that's how I felt. I'm like, oh my God, I just won an Academy and everything. I say, I would like to thank the Academy for everything that, you guys have done over the years. And, I was like, Quest, open up your jacket so they can see the signature. Because one thing about Greg and all the other designers that we work with is the fact that we had to actually sign. So to have your own signature in a label inside of these designers, outfits, I mean, it was really, really mind-blowing. I'm telling you, it was very, very special. And Quest, I mean, he looked really, really great in his apparel at the Met Gallery. I mean, it was really good. I'm like, we won an award, so what else can we say about fashion design? So Gee's Benders have come a long, long way when it comes to fashions. We have a lot of things that's going to be happening in the near future. We're very excited about it. The idea that people are now beginning to come to Gee's Bend and meet us and, be able to speak directly to the quilters is wonderful.
Well, I think we have some images for reference that were taken in the 1930s in Gee's Bend to help show just how far that community has come since the census at the height of the Great Depression identified Gee's Bend, Alabama as the poorest place in the United States at the height of the worst economic catastrophe in American history. And so there is an idea that a lot of people have from these classic photographs that I think is a very stark contrast with the work that you and other people who live in the community are doing today. And for example, talking about the fashion collaborations, Loretta, there's a quilt that you made, and before I go any further, I've been remiss because I can't quite see where everyone is sitting, but in addition to Claudia, Loretta, and Marlene, who are with me on stage, I want to acknowledge that Loretta's sister, Joanne Pettway West, is here with us in the audience. And Stella Pettway is in the audience. And Emma Mooney is in the audience. And all of these talented artists have work in the exhibition at the Haley Gallery and have collaborated on some wonderful things that we'll see at the end of the talk. But Loretta, you made a quilt using some of the silks and much more difficult to use fabrics. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Oh, yeah. It was kind of challenging, but like Claudia said, we, even though it might be challenging, we take it as a challenge, and we can make anything out of nothing. But that quilt, you know, she gave me some straps, and I said, ooh, all these, you know, I'm gonna just sew them together. And it's called Lazy Gal. And, but it was a little difficult to make, but it's pretty. It's really pretty, but I had to get my sister Joanne to quilt it. I love making, but I don't like quilting. I'll quilt, but I just like making. I prefer making any day. I prefer making sewing right now than being here on the stage. Yeah.
But and a lot of the quilts are actually collaborations. We might have one artist's name on the wall with a quilt, but that there could be 2, 3, or more people who participated after the top was pieced, like you were describing, piecing the top and working with Joanne to do the quilting. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that process? Because I know in addition to that quilt, there are quilts that the two of you worked on with your mother Queenie that are in the exhibition.
Oh, yeah. So what we did, someone had sent some material. It was silky-like. So I had my sister Joanne and my mom to make some blocks where they made a little small quilt, about a baby size. And I took it, and I made one also, and took it and put it together and made a bigger quilt. And it's like Paul said, it's in the gallery there, the quilt. And I quilted the quilt. So normally, just one person would make the quilt top, and maybe several would do the quilting. But this, you know, and we do it all the time, all of us. We may get together and collaborate with each other or someone else and make the quilt top, and then maybe 1 or 2 person would quilt the quilt. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Marlene, you went out and lived away from Gee's Bend for many years, but then you came home and began quilting later. Can you tell us a little bit about what you remember when you were first learning to quilt, and what exactly got you back into making the beautiful quilts that we have in the exhibition?
Well, it wasn't mandatory, but tradition. If you lived in Gee's Bend, you knew how to quilt. So, you know, being little, you know, like 8 or 9 years old, my mother would let us play like on the edge of the quilt with a few stitches. And other than that, we would play underneath the quilt like a playhouse. So that's what we did when we was children. But when she got sick in 2000, I came back. And when I got to Gee's Bend, the women's were just quilting, and I just, what's all this about? So this particular night, my mother, she was in the bed, and she was doing this, and she was doing that, moving her hands. And I asked my brother what she's doing. He says, well, you know, back in the day, you know, she used to patch pants, she used to quilt. So that's what she's doing. I said, well, okay. So I went and started ripping up curtains and pieces and just put them on the bed. She started pressing them out with her hand, and that's how I got started. And from that, I just took off and ran with it. And if you had told me that I would take time to do a quilt, I would say, you're out of your mind. But I was so hyper, to the point where I would drink 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day. So, I was pretty tight. So, but the quilts really calmed me down to the point, like, even when the children came in, or at the time I had a husband, when he came in, only thing he saw was the top of my head because I'd be busy, doing my quilts. So Loretta and I, we worked together. And I guess you've seen the picture of Alex and, the picture, one was slop and one was neat. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but anyway, she's the neat one. I'm the sloppy one. She puts the trash can right here. I cut the floor off. I think it was Alex and Felix. Okay, so that's the way we work. So anyway, when we work together, we have usually like 2 people, and for some reason, when they come in, they know exactly who to go to. The neat one will go to Loretta, and I hadn't figured that out yet, okay? But that's the way it works. So anyway, we sat there for a while. When they bring what they want to work on, okay, we'll do it. So when I get to a crossroad, and we could laugh about it, I just tell them straight, you cannot take a Volkswagen and make a limo out of it, okay? so let's go another route. So I says, well, I'm going to throw a G's bend twist in it. So once we get that done, and then we're good to go. And another thing, when my parents passed away, it took me a few years to, let it sink in. And I can remember getting 15 garbage bags. I came and cleaned the whole house out. I took all of their clothing, took them back, made 21 quilts, gave each one to one of my siblings. So now small little wall hangers, I've started to give the grandchildren a piece of my mother and father. Because if there's any money, it's gone. But the quilts will be here for the next 100 years.
And I wanted to bring up for just a moment come back to the CD covers for the box set that was recently reissued, because Loretta, one of your quilts is actually featured on one of the CD covers that was recently released. And we were talking ahead of this event. Joanne in the audience is your sister, and Queenie was your mother. Marlene here is your sister-in-law, and then some of the other quilters whose work was featured on the other CD covers who are no longer with us, but Martha Jane Pettway created the quilt that's featured on another of the CDs, who was your great-great-aunt. Lottie Mooney, whose work is featured on another of the CDs, is actually Kathy's grandmother, as well as the grandmother of Emma Mooney Pettway and Polly Mooney Middleton, who both have work in the exhibition at the Haley Gallery. And we actually have Kathy's recreations of her grandmother's quilt, as well as one in the Haley Gallery that her sister Emma created. That's very exciting to see these traditions carried through and the patterns recreated through generations, and then the last quilt that was featured on one of the CDs by Claudia Pettway, who I believe you said was your aunt by marriage. So it's very special not only to have the images preserved of the art that was made many years ago, but also to be able to share with everyone in the gallery just how many talented artists continue that tradition and who are alive, putting their own spin and their own talent into these quilts that we can all enjoy in the gallery. Loretta, in addition to your printmaking, you went to Berkeley several years ago to work with what was then Paulson Bach Press, now Paulson Fontaine Press, and now there are museums across the country that not only have your quilts, but also have your prints. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difference in your process between thinking about how you put together a pattern to sew a quilt top versus how you think of a pattern that becomes a print?
Well, at first making a print, it started out like a quilt. You use whatever you're going to use out of the fabric, but like with my quilts, I always use clothing. But it's a smaller quilt. Just think about trying to compress a quilt into a smaller, just say 24 by 24. And at first, it was a little hard to do. But then I said, well, it's just like making a quilt, so, just start sewing and make it smaller. So that's what I did. And so what we did, we made a smaller piece, kind of like the piece you see in the back of me. And they pressed it onto a copper plating. And then they, ran it through a press like they do not too far in this press here. And they had to make the colors like the colors that was in the quilt, the little small marquette, we call it. And it was very exciting seeing that transformed into fine art, And it looked beautiful even before, but it's looked even better on paper or print. You see it's just like a quilt, but now it's art, even though a quilt is art also. But now, just seeing those print throughout the world and throughout the United States, and not only mine, but Louisiana Pettway Bennett, then there's Essie Bennett, and then Mary Lee Bennett, and then Loretta Pettway, which was a cousin.
Who also has work in the show here.
Yes, exactly. But, yeah, so check those prints out.
Well, but also you referred to the prints as fine art. So a question for all three of you. Quilts, fine art or everyday object to be used, or both?
Both.
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 All right. So they are meant to be used and enjoyed. And then I will ask another question because there are quilts that I have hung in exhibitions before, and there's always a difference of opinion when you have more than one person looking at them, because I might look at something and say, oh, this is the top of the quilt, and someone else looks at it and says, no, don't hang it this way, hang it this way. Obviously it's supposed to be this way. Do you have a strong opinion? Do you feel like where your signature is on the quilt always shows people the way that it's intended to be looked at? Or is it meant to be enjoyed by anyone who looks at it, however they choose to look at it?
Well, for me, when I'm making, I always know what is the top and what is the bottom. But I also think that for the person who's making the purchase, it gives them 4 ways to look at it. So when I price the quilt, I price it times 4. Okay, because I feel that you're getting 4 quilts in one. So when you go and you see different prices on quilts, and you think, well, why is this one so much, and why is this priced that way? Because if you turn it all different directions, you may actually get a different look. And so, therefore, 4 prices, 4 quilts in one. And, and depending on the mood that you're in, also, determines how you may want to hang your quilt. How does it speak to you in your house? Is it something that you're going to actually use on your wall, or are you going to put it on your bed? So when you first come in your home, is it a foyer piece where you want to be inspired when you leave the house, and you may leave your house all happy, so it's all right there happy, and you come home from work and you're like mad as mad can be. You're like, oh, whatever, let me turn it this way. So you get a different story. So it's the story that you feel was in your heart, and when you look at it, that's going to tell you which direction you should hang your quilt. Best answer I got.
Thank you. Well, and thinking about the colors and the patterns, Marlene, you and I were talking earlier this morning about how you will see things or think of things and have colors inspire you. Can you talk a little bit about what makes you choose the colors that go into the quilts that you make?
Well, I made one particular quilt. I get the attitude sometimes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. So the bad and the ugly. I think I was watching the Super Bowl, and I think Beyonce was there, and she had one of the kids come up from Sandy Hook Elementary School, and I remember the uniform the kid had on. And I think it was khaki and the white shirt and the little green emerald. So I made a quilt out of that. And sometime I get, oh, I'm sorry. Sometime I get, a little upset, sad, but I do that sometime. And there are times when I feel like I want to be in a better mood. I go back to the bags and pull out my mother and father clothing. Then I start to make quilts out of their clothing. And then that makes me, feel better. So certain events that happen, I just don't let it pass by. I did a few others. The Virginia Tech, I did one of those quilts. I did a 9/11 quilt. So I just keep those every so often, like just a reminder, Then I go back into my zone where I could get comfortable. And somebody might ask me, well, how did you do this? Well, I'm clueless. I have no idea where I'm going. I'm just clueless to the point. One lady in the community, she says, you just mixed up in the head. But I have no idea where I'm going with it. So when I get to that point, I get up, I walk away, take a cup of coffee, and I used to take a little wine, But after I spilled wine on one of my quilts and messed it up, so that did away with the wine, so I just stick with my coffee now. But anyway, I feel more comfortable now getting old clothing, working with old clothes, because that brings me back to a time when people weren't so stressed, and I could focus much better just dealing with old clothing now. So I'm good to go. Just worried about keeping the floor clean.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to ask if anyone in the audience has any questions for these amazing artists.
Hi, I just have a question about the designs. Sometimes it looks like they're actually symbols. Sometimes it looks like it's just colored mixing. Do you use symbolism in the design pattern, or is it oftentimes just the creativity that you bring to the quilts?
Thank you. So she was asking, because sometimes some of the quilts appear to have symbols worked into them, whether there is a specific symbolism or iconography incorporated into the quilts, or whether is it more of an automatic process where you're taking one piece and then going to the next. Can each of you just talk a little bit about that process?
Well, when I'm doing it, it's usually, like Marlene said, that when something is going on in your life, or you see something going on in the world, you kind of get in a zone of, I won't call it symbol, but kind of a reminder of what is going on. To relax your mind. You get away from what's going on in the world and you start laying down pieces, and if that looks good, you go with it. Or you just let the piece make itself. If it's not straight, you put another not straight piece on it. But it puts you in a relaxing, it takes you out of what's going on, really, and puts you in a place that you can deal with what's going on. I think with me, that's how it works.
And then you have to remember, there might be a lot of depression going on. And back in the day, like my mother had 14 children. So I can imagine what she went through with. So with me, it keeps me out of that zone where I don't have to think about anything else, but just picking out different colors and putting them together. And I've gotten so now when I get the colors and put them together, I use them as families, neighbors. They get along together. This get along together. And that's how I create a lot of my stuff. And then I would take a piece that doesn't have anything to do with anything. Then I says, well, here's coming into the neighborhood, and we don't really like this person. So we're going to put this person way over there. But yet still, it comes together. So that's how I do a lot of my quilts.
Thank you. Claudia?
Yes, funny. Actually, for me, I do a lot of custom work. And the reason is that I'm slow. Although I'm a fourth generation quilter, I always think of myself more as a artist, textile, because I don't quilt very well. Like, Loretta and Marlene here, yeah, I call them professionals. I admire their work. And so I do a lot of work where people will come to me and ask if I would make them a quilt because they've seen something that I may have made on my social media. So a lot of my work is intentional as to what I put together. Nothing never really meant to be a symbol. If someone sees a symbol in it, it is pretty much their imagination. I pretty much deal with, when I speak with my customer, as to why are they wanting this quilt made. If they're providing a particular fabric, what is the occasion? What was that fabric used for? Is it a happy occasion? Is it a sad occasion? And then I use it to the best of my ability when creating. And most of the time, the only thing I can say is that I will always incorporate a traditional, a staple geese bend pattern inside of my abstract work, because most of my pieces are abstract as opposed to traditional. That's the type of work that I do. Well, at least that's what I think I do. So for me, that's pretty much how I create. I create based on the individual